Okay.
Hi, and welcome to the Aten Inquisition, where we spend a little bit of time getting to know the populace of Atenveldt just a little bit better. We're your hosts, Morgan and Elizabeth, current King and Queen of Atenveldt during these times of plague. Today, our guest is Lady Runa. Runa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Runa. I'm a member of the populace of the Barony of Tariskathir in these glorious solar lands of Atenveldt. I've been in the SCA for going on 5 years now and loved every second of it.
Nice.
So, how did you find the SCA, and was there a person or a thing that hooked you?
So this is the funniest story. I'm just trying to slide down a little bit that I love to tell. So I joined by accident. I'd done archery as like just a sport through middle school and high school in Washington. And when I came to Arizona, I was having kind of a hard time connecting with people, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And this was like, I was a really huge extrovert, and I'd been thrust into a situation where I didn't really have any friends. So my college counselor at the time, because I was undecided, so I had to meet with her on a regular basis, said, I think we have an archery club on campus. They're called like the College of St. Felix or something. And I was like, okay, cool. And so I found the Facebook page and actually connected with Baroness Sigrid, who is now one of my nearest and dearest, my very best friends. And I'm like, hey, you know, when is your next meeting? She goes, oh, it's tonight. Well, I show up, and it's not an archery club. But in addition to that, I was a huge medieval nerd. I was obsessed with Queen Elizabeth when I was in like middle school, and Vikings were a huge part of my interest in high school. And so they're like, oh, we're so sorry. You know, this isn't an archery club. But I didn't even care at that point. They taught me how to illuminate a scroll, and they put a rapier in my hand, and I was 100% on board. And so I always think it's funny because a lot of people I meet join the SCA either like through LARPing or because they were kind of born into it. And I just like accidentally stumbled my way into this club that is now 90% of my life.
Nice. So have you only played in Atenveldt, or have you played in other kingdoms?
I've pretty much only played in Atenveldt. Because I'm technically from on tier, when I've come to visit, I did one local practice just to sort of see culturally everyone is very different from kingdom to kingdom, which is really cool because that reflects the real world. But I've never, outside of that, I've never really participated in any kind of like extensive way in any other kingdom.
So, do you have a favorite story out of the 5 years you've been here?
I have so many. I think the thing that really got me here was I joined the SCA and I was only practicing in the College of St. Felix. I wasn't going to baronial practices. I wasn't doing anything with BTY, which is kind of hard to do because it's such like an involved barony. Like I am incredibly lucky to be a part of BTY. But everyone's like, well, you have to go to Estrella. And I had been in the SCA 3 months when I went to Estrella. And so they're like, oh, it's intimidating, but like you go to Estrella, you're in it forever. Like, okay. And so everyone in the college at that time had joined houses already. So I was camping in the college's lands, but I wasn't, like everyone had gone to do something. So I, at the behest of Hawk, he said, you should go do watch. And I was like, all right, I'll go do watch. And as you know now, that is like my passion at Estrella is watch. But go to watch, and I get taken in by the guys from the Outlands that are all like these huge, so kind, but like massive dudes, and they all have matching cornets, and I'm like, I want to join the watch. And they're like, well, okay, we'll send you on your watch. And my partner had ducked out on me. And so I'm kind of like by myself on this first watch, and all sorts of crazy things happen. A golf cart gets stolen by a crown that will remain nameless. We had this poor squire from Kaid, who was like the human equivalent of a golden retriever who did not know how to say no to anybody and had been left on his own. But we get this call that someone's gone missing. And there's like this description of this girl. She's got blonde hair and she's kind of pale and she's wearing this green dress and we've been looking for her. So I'm like, oh, well, you know, I'm watch. I'll go find this person. And I'm like looking and looking and looking. And I get back to the watch station. And I'd started watch at 9 p.m. and this was now about 9 a.m. And the entire College of St. Felix is in there. And I walk in to you know, check in, and they all go, Zoe, because I didn't have my name at this point. It was me. I was the girl that was missing because I didn't told anyone that I was going on watch. And they couldn't find me. And I checked in, but I told them I was going on watch at midnight, but I'd had nothing to do. So I'd set up, so my name was like pages behind. And there was twofold. One, it was incredibly funny and everyone had a great laugh and I got to enjoy all of watch. But two, people had missed me and had gone looking for me, and I had this like community that was like immediately solidified because it was a, you know, Saturday night at war and it was all really fun. But they had, instead of enjoying that time, gone searching for their wayward bard, and then they found me after all of it. And I love telling that story just because you get to see I say everyone should do watch at least once because you get to see and enjoy like the weirdest parts of Estrella. But that's definitely, after that, I was 100% in the SCA.
I love that you were looking for yourself.
I know, it was, everyone made fun of me. They're like, the dress was described as yours. I'm like, I don't know. Look, okay, I'm not always the brightest person.
I've been up all night. Come on.
Like, I was very tired. You can't play me like that.
So, do you have a developed persona? And tell me about your heraldry. Does it have any significance for you?
So I do Runa, 9th century Viking, and I went with seer. They're called vulvas in period because I've kind of looked at everything that a Viking woman, we know with the evidence that we have, like what they would have done. And what really solidified it is me and my fighter, the person that I consort for, Lagertha, went to Norway, and one of the ship of the Viking Queen, it's called. Vikings didn't really have royalty like that, but that's kind of the nomenclature it's been given. They had a seer, and they went through the sort of purpose of them in Viking culture, and as far as we can tell, they did religious rites and marriages, and were kind of these spiritual guides. And also they used to throw weed in the fire to get everyone like really stoned before battle, and I just think that's funny. But I liked kind of how they existed as unmarried women who weren't warriors, because I think that's kind of how I would have existed in the times. And I liked their connection with the religious aspects of Viking culture. I know we say Viking, it's really like Icelandic and Nordic, but it's just, everyone knows what you're saying when you say Viking. I changed my heraldry recently. I'd started out, and then, Lord knows, I've tried to be a herald, but if you ask me to blazon this, I will fail. But I had 2 unicorns rampant, so they're like facing each other, and there were silver is argent, I think, on a blue background, and underneath was a black lamp with a flame in it, so lamp of learning. And I just like that, just because it's like I wanted to soak up knowledge, but I was never really happy with it. And recently, if I read the Oscar right, my heraldry passed, and it's the same unicorns, blue background, but now the entire thing's blue and silver, and I have 7 stars over the unicorns. And be really honest, we're in the SCA, so I think we can all admit we're huge nerds. They're the 7 stars from the crown of Durin on the doors of Moria from Lord of the Rings, because I'm one of the biggest Tolkien fans I know, but I'm specifically really into the dwarves and like their entire mythos and all the things they had to overcome. And Durin is one of my favorite characters that exists in the entire mythology, so I wanted to kind of like pay tribute to that a little bit.
There.
That's nice.
I like it a lot. So yeah, it's been fun. Plus blue and silver, they just look good on everybody. So it's solid heraldry colors for when it comes to being a consort.
Yeah. So do you have any current goals in the SCA?
Yes. My big goals in the SCA are always, I just want Watch to succeed. And so far, I think we've done a pretty good job of that. But next year, you know, I always say every year, like next year, we're going to have the most people on watch that we've ever had before. And now that this is my first year as the Kingdom Sheriff, I think I have the tools to really kind of make that goal a reality. But for just Runa as a person, that's a little more Zoe. Just contribute as much as I can to the bardic community. It's the part of the SCA I'm personally most passionate about. I'm a member of the Word of the White Oak. I'm the current bard of the Boar, but it's such an important part of especially war culture. The bards around the fires for entertainment is really, to me, what made Estrella and what like really brings me into that sort of, I'm in the Middle Ages and these are my friends and we're existing on this raid or whatever, you know, we're doing. And so contributing as much to that community, or I'd always wanted to of really amazing bardic opportunities. And luckily, bardic actually does translate a little bit better into online than a lot of other things do. And there were a lot of great bardic challenges that came out of the whole known world, from baronial to kingdom to out of kingdom. Really, everyone was really working together to stay inspired. And so it was really exciting to be a part of that. And that's really helped my journey, because that is my focus and the thing that I didn't join the SCA for bardic, but it is the thing that I've been most inspired to do through the SCA. And the goal that I continue to try and achieve is like, what can I do next to improve as a bard?
Nice. So in all of your time here in the SCA, is there a job or a particular piece of art that you are the most proud of?
Oh, that's all so different. As proud as I am of my bardic pieces, I think running watch at Last Astray is probably the thing I'm the most proud of. It was because, you know, it's easy to fall into the idea that the SCA is just a club, and I do think that you should bear that in mind, but you don't realize how much work it can actually be until you take an officer position, until you're a royal peer, and then like it's not just the fun parts of the SCA, it's actual real problem solving and paperwork. And I worked 52 official hours at Last Estrella, but I was on for pretty much the whole week because we had a lot of things that come up in the way that they do. But I was able to put out the fires that I needed to, and I was able to learn so much from Cricket, who is the wonderful woman who usually ran the watch. And we really we ran into problems and we ran into things that needed to be solved, and we were able to solve them without having to involve, you know, the crowns, who are incredibly busy, or the event stewards who have a million things they need to worry about. Like every little issue that shows up at the watch does not need to be addressed by them. So I was at the end of the night, my last night driving out, I was like so tired and just like so satisfied with how it had worked out, and all that I'd learned during that, and so excited. And of course it didn't happen this year, but next year, like so excited to implement all that I learned and make watch run even better and contribute even more to a cool Estrella and get people involved. So I would say that's probably the thing I'm most proud of thus far.
So is there anything that you love doing that's outside of your normal path that you've been leading in the SCA?
I used to fight hard suit, not well at all, which is fine. That's not really what I meant to do. However, the times that I've done it, fighting glaive is so fun. It is so fun to fight glaive, and I every now and then will find someone who's willing to kind of mess around with me on it, because it is, like, in my opinion, as someone who's not a fighter, the most satisfying way to fight. I don't know, like something about it. I just like at the end, I'm like, yes, this is delightful. That's probably the big one. It's like, I'm not, like I said, I did hardsuit for a very short period of time, and I doubt my green card is at all still good, but I think that it's super fun. And I think everyone should try a little bit of every aspect. I think everyone should try at least some kind of combat. Doesn't have to be hard suit, but there's a million things to pick from. I think everyone should try an art, and I think everyone should try some service, because those are these are the things that make the SCA, and you should at least taste a little bit from each part of it.
Is there anything that you want to try that you haven't had a chance to try yet?
Oh, there's a lot. Really want to try and shoot a crossbow. I saw those at Last Estrella, and I was like, I didn't know that was an option, and that was incredibly fun to watch.
So fun.
And I actually, I would like to get my green card, I think they call it, they're fighter cards, back, specifically because I saw a bard from the Outlands at Last Estrella who got their hard suit so that they could go on the field and watch everything that happened and write a really cool story or song, because they were there in that moment, and they were able to then, because you hear great stories second and third hand. I mean, my favorite thing to do is Duke Ed has, his eye is out, and I've heard 500 stories about how Duke Ed lost his eye, and none of them are correct. And that's fun, but it's, it's second and third and fourth hand. I think it would be really fun to be on the field and watch someone do something really cool, and then be able to turn that into new lore for the kingdom or for the society. I thought that was so unbelievably cool, and that's kind of like something that's kind of in the back of my head, something I really want to try.
So other than disappearing for hours and hours, what do you think you're known for in the SCA?
Oh, it's rough. Very loud, which isn't just because I'm a loud person. I'm also a bard, and there's the running joke is everyone always knew when I was in camp because they could hear me from Delarock, which was 3 camps away. But it's a big part of the SCA is like I said, the bardic, so I'm fine with that. But I think that's probably, and glass, just not because I do a whole lot with it, but it's sort of an unusual art form. It's really common in Tacoma, but not as common in Arizona, and so I've had offers to come and teach glass classes and stuff from people that I've never interacted with or only interacted with once or twice, specifically because there's just very few of us. So I see probably either the bardic or the glass.
I think for us it was that you just kept avoiding our courts for a long
time. Okay, look, Morgan, look. I recognize that I didn't show up to get my beautiful AOA. Oh my goodness, I love that thing. I have so many feelings about that AOA. But it's been 5 years, and every year you're king and you get it out, and then everyone gives me shit. I'm like, damn it.
And now it's on this now. So
I know. I'm gonna be in 30 years. I'm gonna be up here. I'm gonna be sitting down, and it's still Morgan's still gonna have disappointed face with my AOA. Oh my god, Jesus! And then all the new college students ask me about it, and I feel like, see, this is why you show up to courts, because the crown will make fun of you until you die.
Right.
But actually, I loved that so much. And that was like the other thing. I was really lucky because I think the SCA can take a lot out of you, especially if you let it. And there's a lot of reasons for that we don't have the time or the energy to unpack. But recognition can be really important to people. And I wasn't in it for awards, but to then be given not just an AOA, which some people don't get, but like this beautiful custom AOA that I don't have all my awards on my walls. I live in a very small house. It's a garage that's been converted, but I have my AOA and it hangs above my door just because it means so much to me. So I absolutely love the thing. And I love that picture when it shows up because I think it's so funny. But Baroness Sigrid, every time she'll Facebook me and she goes, "Do you see what Morgan's profile picture?" And I already know what it is. I'm like, yes. Is it my disappointed face? Yeah. I know. Same.
It keeps popping up in my memory feed, so I just have to share it.
So I actually feel like you've kind of touched on it already, but what advice would you give to a brand new player?
I think there's so much advice you can do, but I'd say try not to get overwhelmed. There's so much you can do in the SCA. And that starts the art. You know, there's a million different kinds of arts and sciences we can learn. There's so many, not just hard suit, rapier, archery, but then all the different kinds of things you can do with that in fighting. And service is so important, but if you spread yourself too thin, and then, you know, are you gonna join a house? Which, you know, how does your barony do that? You know, who are you gonna belt to? Like, culturally, we have so much that kind of goes on in our microcosm that if you immediately try and throw yourself into all of it, it can be a lot. And I did that. I got burned out kind of early for a little bit because I immediately just wanted to embrace it all, and you can't. Like, that's just not. You just can't. You can't do that. So I think that you really just, I'd start going to local practices, start talking to people. Don't try and get yourself belted too early. Don't try and settle into a path too early, because I know that a lot of people, especially people who join the SCA because they knew people, like, immediately are trying to think about that end goal of a belt. And it's super corny, but I do think it's more about the journey than the destination. Like, I think the act of what you're doing to get to your end, you know, your peerage or whatever your end goal is way more important and way more fun. Which isn't to say those aren't important, but I think if you focus on that and you don't focus on what you're doing to get there, which I think some people can run into, you miss it all. So I think as a new person, definitely just kind of, you know, ease yourself into it. Don't get burned out, and you'll get to enjoy a lot of the really cool stuff in the SCA.
So who inspires you?
Oh, so many people. It's so wonderful. I'm so lucky to have so many great inspirations in my life. Definitely Baroness Sigrid. That woman is so put together. She's always like, oh, I'm such a mess. And I'm like, okay, Sam, with your wonderful real life job and then everything you do in the SCA, and she's got 500 folders, and she knows what each individual office is doing down to like what they did the minute of that day, and she's got she's got her hand in everything in the barony and the kingdom, and she never drops a ball. It's mind-blowing, and I just aspire to be able to do that. Definitely my peer Wander. She's my bardic inspiration. I think she writes the most beautiful stories and songs, and she holds herself. Everyone always jokes that we're a little oil and water, and they're kind of surprised because I'm loud and a loudmouth, and I over-involve myself in people's personal dramas, and I lack all grace and beauty, and she's like the most poised, put together woman of the rose, and just, you know, she's in everything is just nothing is just peaceful and carries herself with so much grace. But I really do aspire to be like that. So I think it's I think it's been really fun to be her student, because we're not just, when I joined the SCA, I thought it was going to be like more like a traditional master's student where you didn't really have to like the person, but you just wanted to learn their art form. Yeah. But it's way more like a mentorship, where you're not just learning one specific thing from them, you're learning so much that's applicable to the real life as much as it is to the SCA. And I'm really inspired by you guys. You were the first crown I ever met on like the 5th practice that I ever went to, and you were so incredibly nice to me. And you just like asked me how I was enjoying, Liz specifically, you asked me how I was enjoying the SCA, and you know, what was my favorite thing. And it was really cool because I'd been in clubs before where like the higher level officers were kind of like removed from it all. And I think every time you guys are crowned, you manage to inspire and engage the populace, even populace members that kind of get passed over sometimes. And I think that's really wonderful, because if we keep engaging the same, you know, handful of people who certainly deserve it, you know, that still doesn't always feel great. And I think we have many wonderful crowns, but I think of all the crowns, you guys do such an amazing job with making sure everyone's having a really good time and really enjoying the society.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So just to completely change direction, what are you doing to keep yourself busy during the plague?
Oh, it's been so fun. Well, I got the plague, and that was fun.
There's that.
And but after that, outside of work, in my mundane life, I have a dog, and I walk him a lot. A lot of video games. I mean, I've hit 10,000 hours in Skyrim, so really setting the bar high there. But I've also, yeah, it's really, I could have had an associate's degree in the amount of hours I put into that video game. It's, you know, I joke about it, but honestly, it's kind of embarrassing. Maybe I shouldn't talk about it that much. A lot of reading, and then for the SCA, I've been trying to do a lot of bardics because I don't want to lose kind of that inspiration. I wrote some songs which were fun and silly. I've heard a lot of cool stories. I went to a bardic and taught at a couple bardic classes, and I've heard the coolest, greatest stories from out of kingdom and in kingdom about fighters and events and things that happened in the kingdom that were just so cool to hear and then inspired me. And so it's been a lot of fun to hear that and then try and write my own while I'm sitting in my house and not doing anything because I can't leave.
It's certainly a great time for bards because, like, where my focus is, there's not a whole lot of that happening.
Yeah.
So
It's our time to shine.
right? Well, it's your time to help keep everybody engaged.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Give them a reason to
Come back.
come back.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you haven't been around for a long time, but are there any traditions that you saw or you've heard of that have kind of gone away that you'd like to see come back?
Let me think of traditions. I'm sure there are. I don't know, like the SCA traditions that I know of aren't incredibly extensive. I can't personally think of any traditions that have gone away.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of really cool things in the SCA that happen that do kind of disappear over time, but things that I've heard that have disappeared have been less traditions and more like individual bases and stuff. So I am interested to see what traditions sort of pop out to me now that I think I've been in it long enough to understand our kind of like, it's kind of fun. I felt like an anthropologist when I first joined because I was a huge nerd. I was a massive nerd, but I was also kind of basic. Like I did the cheer and the ballet, and like I was kind of a closeted nerd. And everyone thought I joined the SCA for a boy, which couldn't have been further from the realm of reasons. And I kind of got to study it as like this person outside. But I definitely understand a lot of our social rules and our traditions now. And there are things I'd be really sad to see go away, but so far everything that I really like around about the SCA has stayed. So maybe in a couple years ask me that question again and I'll have something to like wag my finger at the youngins about.
Back in the day.
Back in my day.
So is there a tradition that you love that's your favorite?
I really like the Friday night like wandering bards that go from campfire to campfire and entertain everybody. There's a lot of really cool individual traditions, like my house Rothenheim, the cloakings that we do. I think that that's a great way to engage us on an individual community, and I think each kind of like microcosm community within the SCA has their traditions. And I know this isn't like outside of the realm of like what is weird and what isn't. I really like when the fighters salute their consorts. I think that's really sweet and like it's a cool little like nod. I thought that was so sweet the first time that I saw it, and now that I've been fought for, it still brings me like a lot of joy that you know, I'm representing this person and they're representing me and we get to acknowledge that. Isn't that fun? And in that realm, I really like when consorts make gifts for each other. We pass them out. Golda gave me the prettiest earrings last time. Lagertha fought for me and Merrick fought for Golda and got to sort of stand and talk to each other. And it never feels like adversarial. Like you don't feel like you're rooting for an opposing football team. Like whoever wins, you want them to do well. And then it's just, you kind of get to enjoy that time together. And I think I really like all those sort of crown traditions where it's all about grace and courtesy.
So do you have a favorite event?
Ooh. As much as I want to say Estrella, I am a sucker for Dragon's Horde, which is a baronial event we have in BTY. We have a great character, Jake the Drake. He roasts everybody. The past couple years I've been in the SCA, he roasts me. It's so funny. I love when they tied all the knights together and you have to fight them. The fighters have to fight them. It's so funny to watch. I just think it's because it's a bonding experience for the barony, but it's also one of the SCA events where you can kind of be a little more silly with it. And I think it's really cool. I think Their Excellencies Magdalene and Simon started this tradition, but the sitting Baron and Baroness have a box full of real gemstones we get from the Tucson Gem and Mineral Show, and that's why I won Bard of the Boar. But regardless of what you get to pick a gemstone, and it's from the Dragon's Horde, and I just think it's such a fun little event.
We have some of those gems.
We do. I didn't realize we weren't supposed to be ridiculous at every event.
No, for sure. I think I take it a little more lackadaisical than perhaps my house and my peer would like me to sometime. But yeah, I think you gotta have fun with it.
I run into that same problem. Everybody wants to be seen.
You gotta. I think you're perfect amount of levity.
So what would make an event perfect for you?
Ooh, what would make an event perfect for me? Really cool fighting. Because there's cool fighting, and then there's really cool fighting where like the fighters are really clever with it. You get to see them like really get into it. I see that a lot at Crown, like right towards the end where they really start getting passionate. But also the fighters that can take it like not seriously, like with the big dramatic deaths. I think that's really fun. And then with very cool fighting, night bardic around a campfire. I think you get that kind of like adrenaline high from watching the really cool fighting and getting to sort of be a part of that aspect of it, and then go into, and now we're sitting around a campfire drinking and singing. It's like, so the energy of that is exactly what I want out of the SCA.
So do you have any new ideas of what you think might help make an event better?
That's so rough because it's so subjective. Like what is good for me isn't good for everyone. I think that having a little bit more, something a little bit more engaging for non-fighters, because I love the fighting. I think it's the cornerstone of the SCA. It's really the part that, outside of the clothing, that makes the SCA feel the most medieval. But if you're not a fighter and you're not like a bard or someone who's been gaining something from that fighting, I've never felt this way, but I know people have felt a little bit pushed to the wayside, especially when we have things that are art-based, but then the fighters come and do pickups. It's like, maybe you want to come check out ANS first. So I think Estrella does a good job of kind of finding that balance. Not quite there, I think, sometimes, but just something that would be a little bit like not just there, but focused. But besides that, I think that, the SC has its ups and downs, but I think the events seem to be something that we can all agree on are pretty great. So I'm very satisfied in FCA events, but I'm very loud and make myself known, so it's not as hard for me to enjoy myself.
Fair enough. So what is a peer in your mind?
I had this whole conversation recently because like I said, when I first started, I thought it was just like a master-apprentice relationship where you were trying to learn one skill from them, and whether or not you liked them, it didn't really matter because you were there to learn one specific thing.
Right.
And now I know it is far more than that. You're not just, and you may have chosen a peer because they were good at one thing you're really interested in, but a peer to me is someone who's not just willing to teach a skill or anything like that, but is someone who is willing to help you grow as a person, and also someone who has your back a little bit. If you're having an issue with anything really, I remember one of my first Astray, I had a silver medal belt, and someone had critiqued me on it because Argent is technically white in Heraldry, and like, you can't have that medal belt, only the knights can wear that. And older Zoe would probably tell him to fuck off. Like, brand new to the SCA, Zoe was like, thought that I'd broken some major social rule. And Sir Justin, like, I was like talking to someone about it, like, I was really concerned, and Sir Justin's like, who told you that? I'm like, I don't know. He goes, you tell them to come find me next time. One, anyone who's giving you critiques like that should not be. Two, they're wrong. Three, he was like, look, you're here to have fun, and even if you do break some kind of social rule, it's like the pointy hat rule. If you address someone as your excellency and it's meant to be your grace, if they quote unquote deserve it, then they'll correct you politely. And if they're mean about it, then maybe they shouldn't be wearing that to begin with. I feel that way a little bit about peers too. Like, if I've broken some social rule, or if I'm doing something wrong and they're like, hey, that's awesome, I'm so glad you're doing that, maybe do it this way. Like, to me, that's a real peer, like someone who's willing to teach with kindness and help you, not hurt you in your journey. And I think I may be biased, and not to let my bardic self get ahead of me. I hope I don't get the kingdom in any trouble. I think Atenveldt is incredibly blessed with some of the best peers in the known world, and I'm so thankful to be a part of that community, because the peers that I interact with are there to help me grow and teach me. And even if I'm not a part, like, I've asked fighters, like, just out of curiosity, like, about fighting, and they're always like, the knights are always so passionate and ready to just like tell me about it, and the artists that I talk to about arts that I'm never gonna do are like so willing to like engage with me, and like, hey, if you're interested, here's, like, you have to ask them, but once you ask them, it's like the floodgates open, and they're like, if you ever are interested, here's what you can do. And it doesn't matter that I'm not belted to them, they still want to help me. And I really enjoy that it's not a conditional relationship. Like, a true peer is there to help you regardless of who you are to them. And I think we definitely have many great inspirational peers in Atenveldt.
Solid. So, what would you like to see from the peers that you think would improve the SCA?
I think the thing I'd like to see the most of is, like I said, when I ask peers for help, they're so willing to give it. But I think, especially with the way we've unintentionally set the SCA up, it can be very scary to ask them. And I'm not saying they are not deserving of respect. They absolutely are. They've worked incredibly hard and they've earned those belts. But I don't think it should come with fear. And when the SCA, there was like, especially in the college, it was like, hey, you can approach these people, but there was kind of this implication to walk on eggshells. And I don't know that that was incredibly fair, but I think that is a culture that exists now. And I think that if peers were a little bit more willing to take the first step instead of expect the first step to be taken, we might be able to break down that barrier a little bit. Yeah. And I think, especially reaching out to young people, I think we do have a problem with retaining younger people. And I've had this conversation a little bit in passing, and it's never mine. I do it all the time, absolutely, but it's never my intention to step on toes. And I think there's this idea that young people aren't struggling in the SCA as much as they are. And I think it goes back to the discussion of privilege, right? Like, I haven't experienced that in my personal life, so it can't be going on at all. But that's just not true. Like, young people are struggling in the SCA for lots of different reasons. And if you can be the bigger person and kind of, as a peer, see past your bias and hear what they're saying and then try and help them overcome whatever that barrier is, I think that would really help with the retention and the enjoyment of the SCA for the younger people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's rough because, even having these hats on our head makes people uncomfortable to come up and talk to us. So I try to go out of my way to make people talk to me.
Yeah, no, and I think, like I said, I think you guys have done a great job. I know very few people who are scared of good King Morgan. Like the cave troll thing is funny, but you definitely both have the personality of very warm and welcoming and able to sort of remove yourself from the hat and interact with people in a way that doesn't come with pretense. And I think that is really great, and it's really helpful for new people, especially to know that if they have questions and they don't know who to ask them, that they can ask you. And even if you don't know, you know everyone, and you'll help find the person who can answer that question.
Yeah. Well, and it is funny how little attention we pay to the newer players and the young that are coming in, because that's really where the future lies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where we're always trying to make it better, but it's finding the right people.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Okay.
So that's actually all the questions that we had for you today.
Questions.
So we wanted to say thank you for joining us and being willing to do this with us.
And share your experiences that you've had.
Yeah. So is there anything else that you wanted to say before we sign off? She's frozen.
We might be having technical difficulties.
I think we might be. So thank you everybody for watching, and we will see you next time.